outside. You're not allowed to sleep in here.
You know, government isn't just a boys' club anymore. Women are everywhere, and it feels good to be needed. It's a great time to be a woman in politics.
We did it!
Leslie Knope stopping for no one.
So what do you get when small-town government employees are actually fun to watch? Parks and Recreation happens. Parks and Rec, to me, is not only my favorite sitcom of all time, but it's my third favorite visual media of all time. But before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of my future reviews. And if you're a fan of epic TV shows and movies, definitely watch some of my other videos on Game of Thrones and One Piece right after this. So anyways, Parks and Rec is a comedy series set in the fictional town of Pawnee, Indiana. It centers on Leslie Knope, a very optimistic and ambitious public official in the Parks Department. She's surrounded by a quirky ensemble of characters and friends. The show highlights her relentless efforts to improve her hometown through various community projects, often facing bureaucratic hurdles and comedic mishaps. Alongside her journey, the series delves into the personal and professional lives of her colleagues, offering a humorous look at the inner workings of local government. The show's charm lies in its blend of absurdity and heartfelt moments, making it a beloved staple of American television. So what makes Parks and Rec so good? The first thing that I think makes Parks and Rec so good definitely has to be its character development. I love Parks and Rec's character development. I think it's amazing because it develops its whole cast. From the extremely optimistic and energetic Leslie Knope, aka our protag, who, side note, is definitely my favorite protag in all of sitcoms, to the stoically hilarious Ron Swanson. Everyone gets their moment to shine. Another aspect that I really loved about Parks and Rec was Leslie and Ron's dynamic. It's a relationship built on mutual respect and extremely different worldviews, which definitely provides some of the best moments in the series. It's funny because even though they both have two completely different worldviews, they respect each other so much. There's multiple instances in the show where they show this. They respect each other tremendously, and I think that's really admirable in their friendship. My favorite obviously being the episode on Ron's birthday.
I believe I said that I thought we worked well together and that I might disagree with your philosophy, but I respected you. And I said that you'll get a lot of job offers in your life, but you only have one hometown.
Yes, that's how I remember it.
A close second when it comes to dynamics is definitely Andy and April. Also, a third is probably Ron and Andy. I love those two dynamics. They're really fun to watch. I just really enjoyed watching the show when these characters were all on screen. I especially love how great April was for Andy and vice versa. And I also especially loved Ron and Andy's relationship as well. Now, we definitely got to get to probably what is the best part of the show. Or I want to say the moment the show changed. I call them the game changers. Now, who am I talking about, you might ask? I'm talking about Ben, Wyatt, and Chris Traeger.
Hello, gents. Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson.
You see, the departure of Mark Brendanawicz might have been the show's turning point. His exit made room for Ben Wyatt and Chris Traeger, two characters who didn't just save the show for potential cancellation, they elevated it. Their arrival brought new life and new relationships that felt like the missing pieces to a puzzle. They fit in so perfectly because they were complementary pieces to so many different characters in the show. But most importantly, Ben for Leslie and Chris for Anne. Some pretty big major spoilers ahead, so definitely skip to this timestamp if you want to avoid them. But if not, then just keep listening. Now, let me explain. During the first season, Leslie was mistreated a lot by Mark, her crush and love interest throughout some of the time of the show, even showing signs of jealousy when he and Anne started talking, even though she was the one who brought them together. Anyway, he made our protag look so bad and incompetent it wasn't working out with what the writers had in mind. So instead, the writers decided they wanted to make a more confident and optimistic character in Leslie, basically the Leslie we all know and love, but clearly Mark couldn't do that for her since he was always treating her like crap, so here comes Ben, at first shown to be the opposite of Leslie, but as time goes by, they really start to get along, and then eventually, when they get together, Ben is the perfect character to support her and make her look her best throughout the rest of the show. Now, with Chris Traeger, he was the perfect support character for Ann Perkins because apparently Ann wasn't working out in the first season. She was disliked, and it wasn't her fault. Her character was just too straight, being the straight right character for Leslie most of the time. So here comes Chris Traeger, the most optimistic and extroverted person I've ever seen in my life, was the perfect character to blend with Anne, making their dynamic much more better to watch than just her and Leslie. Chris's insane amount of extroverted and positive energy changed Anne for the better. You see moments of growth for her as a character in terms of letting loose and having fun. So pretty much Ben and Chris's arrival really changed how everyone on the show acted, making things a lot funnier and better. They quickly became main characters, which really helped make the show great. This all happened because the people who were writing the show knew that they had to fix something that wasn't working out right, specifically replacing Mark. So they made some smart changes that resulted in an overall enhancement in the show's quality. Now, that's not to say that Mark himself was a bad person, as in the actor for Mark, like he wasn't a bad actor or anything. It's just that the character that the writers had written down for him just wasn't doing it. But if you want to know more about how these two changed drastically the show of Parks and Rec, you should definitely check out Nerdstalgic's video on it right here. I definitely recommend it. The next thing that I absolutely loved about Parks and Rec was April and Andy and their dynamic. I kind of spoke about this earlier, but I really want to get into it a little bit deeper right now. So April started as an intern at the Parks and Recreation Department of Pawnee, while Andy was initially introduced as the slacker boyfriend of Ann Perkins. April's initial crush on Andy evolved gradually and subtly. The brilliance of the writing lies in how naturally they brought April and Andy together. Despite their age difference and differing levels of maturity, the writers managed to create a relationship that felt both inevitable and right. Their bond started to form when Andy was living in the pit outside Anne's house. April would visit and they would enjoy each other's company doing simple and silly things. Andy's genuine, unabashed cheerfulness broke through April's shell of sarcasm and indifference. But what I love the most from them is how their relationship and their love for each other grew them as people and individuals. What do I mean by that? As mentioned earlier, Andy started out in the show as the slacker boyfriend for Anne, and it wasn't until he met April and started to really like her where he learned to be more responsible and accountable. He learned his mistake from his last relationship and used this one as a way to grow, but most importantly, while staying the same Andy we all know and love. Great writing from the writers here. I also really loved how April didn't want to be in a relationship with Andy if he still had any harboring feelings towards Anne, especially after he found out about the kiss Andy and Anne shared in the hospital. Shows growth in her too, especially since this all came after her breakup with her boyfriend. Lastly, my favorite thing about these two was their quote-unquote dinner party. Another quick major spoiler, so if you don't want to get spoiled, then skip to this timestamp right here. One of the most memorable aspects of the relationship is their spontaneous decision to get married at a surprise party, originally planned as a mere dinner date. This episode beautifully showcased their impulsive yet perfectly matched love. The relationship between April and Andy is a great example of Park and Recreation's ability to combine humor with heart. Their story arc shows how two seemingly mismatched individuals can come together to form a uniquely supportive and loving relationship. The writers did an excellent job in crafting a relationship that is not only entertaining but also relatable and inspiring. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for sticking around for this deep dive into Park and Recreation, where we explored everything from the dynamic duos of Leslie and Ron to the quirky love story of April and Andy. We saw how the arrival of Ben Wyatt and Chris Traeger revitalized the show, turning it into the comedy drama powerhouse that we all know and love. Parks and Rec isn't just about the laughs. It's about character growth, overcoming bureaucratic absurdities, and forming heartwarming relationships along the way. Again, for me, if you enjoyed this review, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of my future content. And again, check out my previous videos on Game of Thrones and One Piece for more epic reviews. Peace.